When we develop self-understanding, we naturally create space for deeper connections.
Detachment does not mean isolating oneself from the world, but creating space for authentic relationships.
Personal growth flourishes in the soil of introspection. It is there that we find the seeds of who we want to be.
When we free ourselves from the need for approval, our interactions become pure and more genuine.
Hello, I'm Ruby and Oliver, and today I have the honor of welcoming two of the greatest spiritual masters of all time. Aristotle, the Greek philosopher who revolutionized Western thought, and Jiddu Krishnamurti, one of the most influential spiritual teachers of the 20th century. It is an immense honor to mediate this conversation between two profound perspectives on a topic that directly affects your life: how to focus on oneself without falling into selfishness. In this episode, we will dive into 10 ancestral lessons that will transform your way of thinking about self-development. You will discover how to balance self-love with social responsibility, learn the difference between healthy detachment and isolation, and understand how your personal growth can positively impact the people around you. Get ready for powerful insights on self-awareness, life purpose, and the art of living authentically in a world that often pulls us away from ourselves. Let's start with a question that deeply touches our everyday experience. Aristotle, in a society as interconnected as ours, when does focusing on oneself cross the line between self-love and selfishness?
Rubian, this is a delicate question that deserves careful analysis. Self-love, when practiced consciously, is fundamental to our health and well-being. It allows us to understand who we truly are, with our needs, limitations, and qualities. However, there is a fine line that separates this self-care from excessive egocentrism. Imagine a musician dedicating hours to their instrument. At first glance, it may seem like a purely individual and even selfish act. But when they achieve mastery, their art becomes a gift to society as a whole. This is how a seemingly individual focus can transform into a collective benefit. The central issue lies in the intention behind our actions. When we develop self-understanding and seek personal growth, we naturally open space for deeper and more meaningful connections with others.
What an interesting perspective, especially this example of the musician. Krishnamurti, I would like to hear your view on this same question. How can we distinguish between genuine self-love and selfishness in our current world?
Look, Rubian, focusing on oneself becomes self-love when it arises from a genuine desire for self-knowledge. It is through this deep exploration that we begin to understand our emotions, desires, and limits, building the foundations for an authentic and healthy life. When we look at ourselves with honesty and integrity, we are not only strengthening our own journey but also developing a greater capacity to truly connect with others. However, when this focus turns into obsession or excessive selfishness, we create barriers that isolate us. In our interconnected society, true self-love carries with it a responsibility to the collective, as our well-being is intrinsically linked to the well-being of others. The secret lies in balance, using self-reflection as a path to liberation, not as a wall that separates us.
It's impressive how both perspectives converge on a crucial point: the balance between self-care and collective awareness. This shows us that authentic self-love does not isolate us, but prepares us for deeper connections with others. Before we continue, let me give you an amazing tip. Did you know that it's very easy to get ahead of 99% of people, succeeding in everything you want for your life? I'll leave a link in the first comment below to a book that changed my perspective on various aspects of my mind, and that has been helping thousands of people find clarity and confidence to achieve their goals and dreams. Don't forget to check it out. I'm sure you'll love it. Now let's explore another crucial aspect of self-development. Aristotle, how can self-awareness be the key to personal growth in a world that pressures us to look outward rather than inward?
Rubian, this is a profound reflection. Self-awareness acts as a beacon amidst the fog of modern life, where we are constantly bombarded by external stimuli and comparisons. In a world that exalts appearances and visible success, it is easy to lose sight of what truly matters. Think of a bow and arrow. To hit the target, the archer needs clarity about their purpose and technique. Similarly, self-awareness allows us to reflect on our actions, emotions, and values. When we turn inward, we can identify our own ends and align our actions with those goals. It's like an artist who, while creating, constantly worries about what others think. They may get lost in criticism and trends, while another artist who knows themselves deeply has the freedom to express their true essence. Personal growth flourishes in the soil of introspection. It is there that we find the seeds of who we truly want to be.
Fascinating analogy of the archer, Aristotle. And you, Krishnamurti, how do you see the role of self-awareness in our personal development in this outward-focused world?
Look, Rubian, it's like a gardener who, instead of caring for their plants, spends the day admiring other people's gardens. They may even feel inspired, but without the act of caring, their own garden languishes. In today's fast-paced world, we are often motivated to seek validation and answers outside ourselves. When we turn inward and cultivate self-awareness, we begin to recognize our own emotions, fears, and desires. It's like a mirror that, while reflecting our true essence, reveals not only what is beautiful but also what needs healing. This process of self-discovery can be challenging, but it is in this space of honesty that we find freedom. Self-awareness becomes not only the key but the door to true personal growth, where what truly matters is what happens within us.
What a beautiful contrast of perspectives. While one shows us the precision of the archer aiming at their inner target, the other reminds us of the importance of cultivating our own garden. Both teach us that true growth begins when we dare to look within. And for you who are noticing the quality of this conversation and the depth and importance of what we are discussing here, help us by leaving your like, and also comment on what you would like to see here on our channel. I sincerely thank you for your help. A question that has generated much reflection lately. Defining your why. Is the secret to a purposeful life or an idealistic pursuit in a pragmatic world? Aristotle, I would like to start by hearing your perspective on this.
Rubian, you see, defining our why is not just an idealistic pursuit, it is as essential as a compass for a navigator. Without it, we may sail, but without a clear direction, we will never reach our intended destination. In the current context, where pragmatism often pushes us towards immediate results without considering deeper principles, having clarity about our why becomes even more crucial. It's like having an ethical north that guides our decisions amid the storm of demands and external pressures. Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, teaches us that every action aims at a good. If we do not have clarity about what good we are pursuing, we risk acting randomly, without considering whether our choices truly promote what is highest within us.
What an interesting analogy about the compass, Aristotle. And you, Krishnamurti, how do you see this search for the why in our current reality?
Rubian, finding our why goes far beyond a simple superficial motivation. In a world where everything seems to revolve around the immediate and the tangible, this search becomes our fundamental anchor. Think of a tree in the midst of a storm. Its leaves and branches may sway with the wind, but it is its deep roots that keep it firm and nourished. Similarly, our why keeps us centered even when external pressures try to divert us from our path. It's a journey that requires honesty and openness to discover what truly moves us. It is not idealism, but rather a commitment to ourselves to live authentically, even when the world invites us to follow more superficial paths.
It's incredible how both perspectives show us that the why is not a philosophical luxury, but a practical necessity for navigating the complexities of modern life. Let's move on to our next question. We have reached a question that deeply affects our relationship with the world and with ourselves. Aristotle, is detachment from external validation truly a source of freedom, or can it lead us to isolation from meaningful human connections?
Rubian, this question is like a double-edged sword that needs to be handled wisely. You see, when we free ourselves from the constant weight of others' judgment, we open space for our true essence to flourish. It's like a writer who sets aside the pressure from critics and writes directly from the heart. Paradoxically, this creative freedom ends up touching people in a much deeper and more genuine way. The disconnection from external expectations allows us to live aligned with our own moral compass. However, we need to recognize our social nature. If this detachment leads us to complete isolation, we lose the richness of shared experiences, mutual support, and the growth that only happens in the dance of human relationships. Virtue is often cultivated precisely in this interaction with others. The secret lies in balance, using detachment as a tool for authenticity while keeping our hearts open to meaningful connections.
What a balanced perspective. Krishnamurti, how do you see this delicate relationship between detachment from external validation and our human connections?
Well, Rubian, true detachment from external validation is precisely what allows us to create more authentic and deeper connections. When we free ourselves from the constant need for approval, our interactions become purer and more genuine. Consider a person who always acts from their inner truth. Their relationships naturally become more genuine because they are not built on the shifting sands of social approval, but rather on the firm rock of authenticity. Detachment does not mean isolating oneself from the world, but rather creating a space where relationships can flourish free from the shackles of ego, competition, and constant comparison. It is through it that we can experience a deeper love and understanding in our connections.
Fascinating how both views show us that true detachment does not distance us from others, but rather allows us to build stronger and more authentic bridges. Let's move on to our next question. We've reached a crucial point in our conversation. Aristotle, is it possible to control our reactions to adversity, or is this a denial of the influence of external circumstances in our lives?
Rubian, this is a question that touches the core of our human experience. Adversities undoubtedly impact our emotional and mental states. It would be naive to deny that. However, our ability to respond to these situations is deeply linked to our discernment and internal direction. It's like an archer who, even amidst strong winds, keeps their focus on the target. A human being can learn to manifest specific virtues in the face of difficulties, not ignoring the storm around them, but consciously choosing how to navigate through it. Life is this constant dance between external circumstances and our internal capacity for resilience. It is not about denying the reality that surrounds us, but about developing a strong internal core through introspection and the constant practice of virtues. This relationship between the external and the internal is what fundamentally shapes our character and, consequently, our happiness.
What a profound analogy about the archer and their concentration. And you, Krishnamurti, how do you see this issue of controlling our reactions to adversity?
Look, Rubian, the issue is not so much about control, but about deeply understanding the nature of our responses to circumstances. Often, we fall into the trap of thinking that we need to modify what we feel or think based on the external environment. Observe the nature of a river. It does not fight against the rocks in its path, but flows naturally around them. Its essence remains the same, even when it needs to adapt to obstacles. In the same way, we can develop an awareness that allows us to respond to situations with clarity and sensitivity without losing our essential nature. It is through self-awareness that we discover the freedom to choose our responses rather than being merely products of circumstances. True transformation comes from this deep understanding of who we are amidst adversity.
Extraordinary how these views complement each other. The wisdom of the focused archer merges with the fluidity of the river, showing us that we can maintain our essence even in the face of the greatest challenges. Let's move on to the next question. We've reached a vital question that we all face at some point. Aristotle, how can we build emotional resilience without becoming insensitive to suffering, our own or that of others?
Rubian, this is a question that touches the essence of human development. True emotional resilience does not mean shielding our hearts, but rather developing a deeper understanding of suffering and our relationship with it. Think of an experienced doctor. They do not become insensitive to their patient's pain, but learn to maintain the mental clarity necessary to help them effectively. Similarly, through the practice of virtue and conscious reflection, we can develop an inner strength that allows us to feel fully without being overwhelmed by emotions. The key is to transform difficult moments into opportunities for growth, not through denial, but through conscious acceptance and the pursuit of practical wisdom. It is about creating an internal space where pain can be processed and transformed into a deeper understanding of the human experience.
This analogy of the doctor is very enlightening. Krishnamurti, I would like to hear your perspective on how to develop this emotional resilience while maintaining our sensitivity.
Rubian, true resilience is like a flower that blooms in arid soil. It does not deny the hardness of the ground, but finds strength to flourish even in the most challenging conditions. Suffering is an integral part of the human experience, and trying to avoid it only makes us stiffer. The practice of mindfulness teaches us to be present with our experiences, whether pleasant or painful, without losing ourselves in them. It is through this conscious presence that we develop the ability to navigate emotional storms while keeping our hearts open and compassionate. When we accept our vulnerability and that of others, we discover that true strength lies not in building walls, but in maintaining our sensitivity while developing the capacity to remain centered amidst difficulties.
What a beautiful contrast between the precision of the doctor and the delicacy of the blooming flower. Both perspectives show us that true strength lies in remaining open and compassionate, even in the face of the greatest challenges. We've reached a question that many of us face when seeking a fuller life. Aristotle, is letting go of what no longer serves us truly an act of wisdom? Or can it simply be an excuse to avoid difficult responsibilities and commitments?
Rubian, this is a profound reflection that deserves careful analysis. Within the pursuit of good and virtue, we need to understand that letting go is not simply abandoning, but rather making conscious choices that bring us closer to our true happiness. Imagine an archer who realizes that their arrow is crooked. To hit the target accurately, they need the wisdom to let go of that misaligned arrow. Similarly, when we rid ourselves of circumstances, habits, or relationships that divert us from our greater purpose, we are exercising discernment, not escape. However, it is crucial to be cautious. Often, we may use this concept as a veiled way to escape responsibilities or challenges that are essential for our growth. True wisdom lies in distinguishing between what truly needs to be released and what are merely necessary difficulties for our evolution.
What an interesting perspective on discernment. Krishnamurti, how do you see this fine line between wisdom and escape when we talk about letting go of what no longer serves us?
Look, Rubian, when we talk about letting go, we are touching on something very deep. It's like carrying a heavy backpack full of stones. Each one represents a limiting belief, a fear, or a commitment that no longer aligns with our true self. Wisdom lies in recognizing which stones truly need to be left behind and which are necessary for our journey. It is not about fleeing from responsibilities, but rather about making conscious choices that allow us to walk with more lightness and authenticity. The true act of letting go is an invitation to rebirth, where freedom and responsibility dance together. It is a process that requires deep honesty with ourselves to distinguish between what genuinely no longer serves us and what are merely necessary challenges for our growth.
Fascinating how both perspectives show us that true wisdom lies in discernment. It is not about abandoning responsibilities, but rather making conscious choices that allow us to grow with authenticity. Let's explore a question that touches the essence of human learning. Aristotle, is inspiring by example more effective than advising? Or is this a passive approach that underestimates the power of words?
Rubian, this question is fundamental to understanding how we truly influence one another. Imagine that each action we take is like a living archetype, a concrete manifestation of values that others can observe and be inspired by. When we choose to live virtuously, demonstrating in practice the importance of good, our actions communicate more deeply than any speech could. As Aristotle emphasized, it is through the practice of virtues that we truly inspire change. It is like a leader who lives the ethics they preach. Their life becomes a tangible lesson, a model that makes values accessible and real. People are naturally drawn not only to what is said, but to the authenticity reflected in actions. This does not diminish the value of advising. Words are vital and often necessary to guide and clarify. But when these words are backed by consistent actions, their impact multiplies exponentially.
Interesting perspective on authenticity and leadership. And you, Krishnamurti, how do you see the issue of example versus advice?
Look, Rubian, when someone lives authentically, their actions naturally create a resonance that words alone would hardly achieve. It's like a flower blooming. It doesn't need to explain its beauty. Its very existence is an inspiration. True inspiration arises from that authenticity, which acts as a beacon, illuminating the path of awareness and understanding. When people witness someone genuinely living their values, it touches something deep within their souls, provoking natural reflections on their own lives. Think about the difference between reading about swimming and watching someone swim gracefully in calm waters. The lived experience brings a lesson that transcends words. The lived example becomes a much richer and more effective form of communication, speaking directly to the soul and motivating internal transformations that naturally manifest in practical actions.
How profound! While one shows us the power of example through authentic leadership, the other reminds us that, just like the blooming flower, our actions speak for themselves. Both reveal that true teaching lies more in being than in saying. Let's explore a fundamental question about our journey of development. Aristotle, is personal growth intrinsically linked to collective well-being, or is this a justification for individualism?
Rubian, this question touches on something very deep in human nature. Personal growth and collective well-being are like two sides of the same coin, inseparable in their essence. Imagine a farmer who dedicates himself to perfecting his skills. By improving his harvest, he not only meets his own needs but also directly contributes to feeding the entire community. Similarly, when we seek our development in a conscious and ethical manner, we naturally generate fruits that benefit everyone around us. Aristotle teaches us that the purpose of politics is to promote virtue and the well-being of citizens. When someone seeks to develop virtuously, they are contributing to a fairer and more harmonious society. Morality and ethics are bridges that connect the individual to the collective, showing that true personal growth is never isolated but rather part of a larger web of relationships and positive impacts.
What a profound analogy about the farmer. Krishnamurti, how do you see this relationship between individual growth and collective well-being?
Look, Rubian, when a person seeks self-knowledge and inner freedom, it resonates in the environment around them like ripples in a pond. It's like a tree that, when it blooms, not only enriches its own existence but also contributes to the entire ecosystem of the forest. Genuine growth, based on deep honesty and authenticity, opens us up to a greater understanding of our interconnectedness with others. When we become more aware, we naturally develop more empathy and capacity for collaboration, realizing that each person is a fundamental part of the whole. Therefore, true personal growth must always transcend individualism, moving us toward responsibility and love for others. Only then can we create a more harmonious world, where individual and collective evolution nourish each other.
What a beautiful intertwining of perspectives. The farmer who feeds his community and the tree that enriches the entire forest show us that true growth always overflows in collective benefit. We've arrived at a fundamental question about our inner journey. Aristotle, how can we balance the focus on ourselves with our responsibility to others, considering that the journey of self-discovery is not selfish?
Rubian, this is a deep reflection that deserves our attention. Self-discovery is like an archer aiming for their target. If we don't have clarity about what we want, it will be difficult to reach our true essence. However, this search should not be done in an isolated vacuum. We need to understand that we are part of a web of relationships. It's like a fruit-bearing tree. For its fruits to ripen and nourish others, its roots must be firmly planted in the soil. By taking care of ourselves, we cultivate this connection. It's essential to recognize that we also benefit when we help our peers. Solidarity and social responsibility help us form a virtuous character, something that Aristotle considered essential for true happiness. In the end, true personal fulfillment occurs when we transform this journey of self-discovery into a means of spreading virtues and contributing to the happiness of others, creating a virtuous cycle that enriches everyone.
What a profound analogy about the fruit-bearing tree. Krishnamurti, how do you see this balance between self-discovery and responsibility to others?
Look, Rubian, the journey of self-discovery is a quest for a deeper understanding of one's essence, which inevitably reflects in how we interact with the world and the people around us. When we look inward, we are enhancing our ability to love and genuinely connect with others. Imagine a serene lake. The clearer and deeper it is, the more capable it becomes of reflecting the beauty of the sky and the trees around it. This is how it happens with us. When we recognize and harmonize internally, we create space for love and responsibility to manifest in our relationships. To balance this internal focus with external responsibility, it's essential to cultivate empathy. By knowing ourselves better, we become more sensitive to the needs and emotions of others. True responsibility does not arise from the weight of duty, but from the joy of sharing what we have learned about ourselves.
Extraordinary how both views show us that true self-knowledge does not isolate us, but connects us more deeply with others. While one reminds us of the fruits we can offer, the other shows us how our inner clarity reflects the beauty around us. Wow, what an incredible conversation we had today. Before we wrap up, I must say that this dialogue between Aristotle and Krishnamurti has brought us profound insights on how to balance personal development with our collective responsibility. It was fascinating to see how both, even with different approaches, showed us that true personal growth naturally overflows in benefit for all. From the analogy of the archer to the metaphor of the serene lake, each perspective helped us better understand this dynamic. I want to immensely thank our esteemed guests for sharing their ancient wisdom in such an accessible and profound way. It was an incredible honor to mediate this dialogue, and I truly hope to welcome them again in future conversations. And you who made it this far, see that we have 2 more incredible videos on your screen now. Just click on any of the images to continue deepening your knowledge. If you enjoyed this content and want to keep receiving more transformative reflections like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We always bring relevant topics that can positively impact your life. Thank you for watching until now, and I wish you to be free from everything that takes away your peace.